Anyone in particular you want me to be looking at more?
We're just gonna talk to each other.
Okay.
It's way better. It doesn't matter. They're an audience. We love you. I have a list of reasons why, but this is our conversation. This is our time.
I love it.
This is our time. It's just for the whole world to see. Not that anybody's actually watching, but if they were, welcome to the Alexa conference here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm here with Patrick from Vaynermedia. Also, your team over there does the event, which is a big event in May. And it was fun to meet you last night. I'm glad we take a moment to do an interview. Why don't you tell me, and of course they're listening, a bit about yourself, your background, how you ended up with Gary Vaynerchuk, and the stuff that you guys are doing in the voice industry.
Absolutely. So Vaynermedia, I should start there, is roughly 900 people around the world right now, global offices, doing all sorts of modern digital marketing. Really what we would say it means to market today. If you were to start this up today, how would you design it?
That's
Well,
right.
we're doing a lot across social channels, a lot across full service digital. And then my group, VaynerSmart, comes in and says, okay, there's maybe the channels where you can reach people today most efficiently, get the most out in front of the most people. What are the next channels going to be? And among those, voice is kind of right up in the front. So I come out of an ad agency background. I've been in creative and strategy departments my whole career, account departments actually, quite a bit of that along the way too. And really, it was interesting when I joined Vayner, there were relatively few people from an agency background. It was much more of an entrepreneur's environment. A lot of people.
It was like him and his brother and their friends to get started.
A lot of
and
folks
that stays for a while.
Yeah, and folks who would come and have that background building their own businesses and really caring about what happened at the end of communications. It's funny, Gary used to often lead into meetings and talk about how we're not a bunch of agency people here, and then I'd have to raise my hand and be like, well, I am, but they aren't. But I do think I was always a little bit of a square peg round hole on the agency side because I did kind of care quite a bit about that full spectrum from, yes, the strategy and the thought about what our message is going to be up front, but following that through to what was someone actually going to do after they heard that? What was the next conversation going to look like? And it started changing in my head pretty much from push out into conversations that you want to have and these sort of exchanges that had a second step and a third step, and you kept going. And that was a nice little dovetail, brought me to Vaynermedia to start this innovations group. And then right as we were getting rolling back in early 2016, Alexa was kind of hitting.
And that's when you came on staff with Gary's 2016?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Started the year.
And when you approached it in 2016 compared to today, maybe it's the same,
Sure.
was the conversation around smart tech, voice tech, about human-human interaction or human-computer interaction?
So when I was coming in 2016, there wasn't much of a conversation around voice tech. Actually, in those early days, the very first thing that we ever did in the voice space was a skill we built for Amazon Alexa for Johnny Walker whiskey. And it was these guided whiskey tastings. And the initial client brief on that didn't have anything to do with voice. It was a program that Diageo, the owner of Johnny Walker, had been running for years doing guided whiskey tastings. They called it whiskey mentorship. Okay. And like if you went out to a distillery and sat down and were guided through the tastings, and you leave this thing really appreciating all the different labels, you're a big fan, and they had great data on how folks who had gone through the tasting experience would then leave, and not only would they have greater affinity for the brand, but they would tell their friends. Ultimately, obviously became brand advocates, really loved it once they had that experience. So our task was how to take that really impactful, really engaged moment that folks were having live and say, can we actually scale that? Bring it out to even people, because you're not going to get everyone on premise. You're not going to get everyone face to face. And I'll say, and I think our Diageo clients would agree with this, when they briefed us on that, they probably expected the answer that we come back with was going to be a video series, and we totally still shoot a video series also, because that is a great way to deliver at greater scale. But we had been playing around with the idea of something in voice. We thought these conversational interfaces are certainly something to them. So we had the good fortune of getting in touch with the folks at Amazon, talking to the Alexa team early, and working in really close partnership with them to create one of these earlier voice experiences. I think we were the first, a couple thousand that were on the platform. And from a client perspective, this was really, it unlocked something where I think all of us from their side and ours, when we started using the experience, doing user testing and working through what it meant to design these types of interactions, a big light bulb went off on both sides. We said, wow, we've been trying to facilitate these conversations one-on-one in certain contexts, but it's always just had a cap on how many folks could opt in, even if they wanted to. And suddenly now, if we design these things right, and we've got some work to do to continue on that front, you can really make it accessible to everybody. Figure out the questions you want to answer.
I think that makes sense. I remember reading a couple case studies like maybe 2017, it feels like, about some stuff that you were working on your team with some of the larger clients. Then you came out and you announced V, which is the voice, right? Yeah. And you did that at the same time as Amazon had the Super Bowl commercial, and you had kind of a Twitter commercial of sorts.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, you lost your voice, don't worry, we got V. And then it was like, we only take projects at 7 figures. No, this is a mistake. I remember thinking like, wow, that's really bold and fresh. I kind of like the approach. Talk to me a bit about V and how your team at Smart has capitalized on unexpected opportunities, like Amazon loses Alexa's voice, things like that. Like some of the wind in your sail.
Sure.
For VaynerSmart.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things there. The voice of the idea, that was actually born out of a little holiday gift that we did for our clients and put together our voice, and the voice that we were going to be using going into the next year, being this combination of all the actual voices of different folks around Vayner. I think that was done a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and really what we were hinting at, which we've then spent the years past talking seriously with clients about, is what do we actually sound like on these channels? So to get a little technical about it, we talk about it as a sonic identity. And many of these clients, big global national brands that people have heard of, have a very distinct visual identity. And if you ask them, describe your brand to me, and oftentimes send, it's a PDF, if you send something, or even static collateral, it would have color schemes, it would have fonts, it would probably have some adjectives that tell you, I don't know, we're aspirational or authoritative or trustworthy or something like that. But in many cases, we don't know what they actually sound like, and they actually don't know either. So that's been a big project for us in the last year, and actually going into 2019, it's a huge area of focus for us.
Is it?
Yeah, building out the sonic identity side of so many of our clients, and really saying, we will have tons of conversation around this conference in these few days that are all leaning into audio first, or in some cases audio only interactions. Then we could take a step over to many of the other conversations around podcasting, around streaming audio, all of these channels that are increasingly part of everybody's media and all around the world, and yet there's not visual first conversation happening. So if you're a brand, what's the equity you're building in your sound palette, and have you taken the same amount of thought and effort and planning that go into your visual identity, which you probably manage very closely? You're really careful, your color scheme's all just right, your logo shows up properly. Are you being as careful when audio is the main way people are interacting with you? So that's been a huge piece on the back of Voice of V for us. Other than that, I think we had the really good fortune, started last year, to have the announcement with our kind of marquee client, JP Morgan Chase, to be named their voice agency of record. That was a really exciting moment for us, and I think we could all play around with it. There's some funny commentary about what the hell does voice agency of record actually mean. For us, what it meant was an engagement that stretched beyond building one individual skill, action, or otherwise a single isolated experience, and instead thinking holistically across this massive company that works across many lines of business with many different types of customers, and saying, okay, how is voice going to come to bear across all these different marketing and product outcomes you're trying to do impact? And so really being engaged at a strategic level up top and saying, to this massive company, what does the future of voice look like? How can we give you good guidance on the things we know, and then also work with you on the things that we don't know, because nobody knows, because we're all building as we go here, and be as up to speed as we can while we're getting into this to plan future marketing products and communications.
One thing that you kind of mentioned is some things you do with their clients.
Yeah.
So what's your approach on a hybrid model? Let's say that your next several large clients where you're the voice agency of record. How do you try to structure relationships? Is it that you do all the strategy, you do all the development, do you try to work in with them as a hybrid model? Do you try to empower them to do things on their own? Like, give me an idea of how you, as one of the leads, strategist and one of the lead companies in this industry, is approaching these large organizations, and what should the large organization, what should the buyer actually be thinking about?
Yeah,
because if they don't choose you as the agency of choice, and they choose somebody else in the industry to do so, what are the questions they should be asking, and how should they make that decision?
Yeah, so I think it's important to start with a collaborative partnership there. So that hybrid model is really what we need. I won't say that there's no engagements where it's sort of under the reins and we run with it. Sometimes if it's a very finite project, it is discrete. We want to build this thing, we already know what it is. You're smart, can you all help us do it? Sure. Sometimes we get in those types of engagements and we can take it and run with it, and it's a little more, let us go do what feedback, show you, and you'll either approve it or comments and we'll update it.
Right.
But I think in the most successful engagements, it's a much deeper partnership than that. It's something where we're in regular communication, and so from that client, from that buyer side, it's important to have a dedicated point of contact and someone who actually has insight into the rest of the company, into where this is going to have impact, and not just isolate this off in either an innovations lead or a purely technical lead. Those people are very important. So we'll actually do kickoff meetings at the start of engagements where we cast the team for the project, and we identify the folks who are going to be probably day-to-day contact. These are your core team, and we keep it small because you can't expect everybody to be involved every single day. So from our side, you're going to have one, maybe two key points of contact, and that may change who the casting is. A negative upfront experience. My first interaction with you will be a bit on the negative side, and my memory is going to be, I talked to me and didn't remember it an hour later, and didn't pay attention, didn't do the basics of a good conversation. If we deliver that in a new channel, where we've actually asked quite a lot of people to engage with something that they're probably not doing every day, it's got to be a positive first experience. So it doesn't have to be huge, but it has to set the right expectations.
Because you're building some great tech in the voice space today, and of course that will progress over time, as time goes on, what advantages will you bring to some of the larger clients? Because you already have built multiple proof of concepts, multiple mobile products, many different products that have gone to market under one brand that you could repurpose for a different brand. And how are you thinking that through as a leader? Like, hey, we're making these decisions to build kind of a foundation so that we come in with a lot of muscle. Talk a bit about that strategy, and over the 5 years, we can talk about some additional stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So from our side out, from the team we're building and the institutional knowledge, I think there's a few ways that really comes to bear. One is just the experience, having made a number of the mistakes and learned from them going forward. One piece that I think, even if you just listen to the different conference here, you'll often hear in the experience design part that we have to be ready for the exception cases. We have to be ready to answer when something goes wrong and try and route someone back toward a positive experience. That's absolutely right. It's also really hard to do. It's something that I think with the number of experiences that we've designed, the number of rounds of trying to do that exact exercise, we've just got a bit more history now in seeing conversations go off the rails and figure out how to route them back on. That error handling is probably, I think, the hardest thing to do in post today well. It's where you get the difference between a rote template that can answer as long as I know what you're going to ask me, to actually an artful experience that feels like more of a conversation. And so that piece is great. And then the other side is we have had the good fortune to partner, actually both Google and Amazon in this space, to bring new features to market. So on the Google side,
for them on
building skills that use, so in the case with Amazon, we built and so did all the way from the strategy and the design all the way through the build and launch for Heads Up. And that was one of the first skills that Jeopardy to include one-time payment. So for the first time, the premium content. But you can imagine there's the technical part of that. How do you get an account on? How do you get a payment? All those sides. But then there's the conversational side. How often do I ask someone to buy something in a channel where they've never bought anything? How do I start to introduce that? How frequently? Is it the first time or the fifth? So that's been a learning experience where we really like the good chance to partner with the platform. And then recently with Google and Lego, we worked with them to bring alarms for kids. Exactly, yeah.
Cool.
And so that was really fun. It was this idea of giving kids an alarm that was going to wake them up with the characters they do. And Lego and Nickelodeon were a couple of their partners. And in that case, similarly, it was working through in real time with the platform as they're figuring out how are kids actually going to want to use alarms? How many versions of this do you need? Is it too much to say, get up and get on with a little bit of exercise this morning or something like that? Because I'm just trying to wake up. Give them something a little bit fun, get them going with a positive day. A lot of cases like that where as different types, new capabilities, new functionalities moving into beta with the platforms, I think through those partnerships, we have the good fortune to work on a lot of those and actually start to build up the muscles of problem solving.
And how about like Siri, which is a pretty closed system, Bixby, which seems to be exciting this year. We'll see what happens. Cortana, obviously the enterprise solution. Watson, obviously an enterprise solution. How about some of these other, software platforms? These groups that are not assisted in Alexa. You guys working with them? Are people asking for development on those platforms? Like, give me an idea of where things are at, where things will go.
Yeah, so this is an important part of those more upstream strategy conversations we were talking about. So I would start with a client who had an experience in mind, and unless there's a pointed, usually a media-driven reason. They might have a certain spend with one platform or the other. To start on one, we'll generally start open and say, and have an open consideration of which platform, or in some cases multiple platforms, that's where we start. If it's going to be an experience that you want as many people as possible to access within their own context, in their home, increasingly in their car, and work, somewhere like that, then you're probably going to want to look across Amazon and Google for a mispronoun, right? If it is, though, something that is going to be on their own hardware or something, and we have many clients where they're looking at different versions of experiences. Those that they'd want to put out to people in the world, then you need to go to the scale players, like Amazon and Google. Those that they might actually hand out hardware because it's more important to them to own an interaction. I'll say, we've done no work in healthcare, but I've been spending a lot of time on the healthcare track, seeing some of the speakers at the conference here, and there's so many considerations, whether it's HIPAA compliance or...
There's only one that's HIPAA compliant right now. That's
exactly. Yeah. And so
everybody else wants to be, and that's why they have a huge advantage right now.
Absolutely. And so if the experiences that you're trying to facilitate actually will work better from a single owned piece of hardware, then you could be looking at these partners. And you made the right point, I think, thinking of Cortana as an enterprise solution, and we've seen them invest in auto and gaming as well.
They have 30,000 reps that sell into the Global 2000.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think a lot about voice is it's one thing to have the 100 million platforms that Amazon has, or the billion, devices that Google potentially has. But you have 30,000 reps that are constantly calling into the enterprise.
Absolutely.
In every major language, you can really push some very interesting things.
Get some real domain expertise there too, which makes for better experience design. All the way down to, you see, I think SoundHound has their booth over here in the Houndify platform. There's room to build own platforms that you might, for say you're a retail business, maybe it's just deployed within your brick and mortar, and it's wayfinding around the space. You may not need that to be deployed outside, or maybe you want both. Maybe you want something people can interact with on their way, and then something else where they can.
Right. Well, final question. Kind of 5-year projection. You can keep it personal, like human, or business, like how it's going to change the way you guys do business or whatnot. But just give me some insights. Like, what does Voice 2024 look like?
Okay. So we were talking about this a little bit before we went on cameras. I think the easiest way to break this down is kind of twofold. When you think about what is voice, first of all, big macro question, right? And I think it's useful to split it into two things: the front end, the interfacing via voice, and the back end, the different data and the AI assistants that are going to crawl. So on the front end, I would say on a 5-year trajectory, we're looking at basically omnipresent voice as an option. I think we run into the issue, particularly at pointed conferences like this, of thinking about this as zero-sum. You're going to do one or the other. I don't think that there's any reason to expect screens to go away entirely, but I think we have a new option. And there's some times where voice is faster, saves you time, more convenient, it's going to be used. Then with the spread from owned devices. So today, even as we try and size the market, we're often looking at the sale of smart speakers. I think that's an important measure right now, and increasingly not. We start to look at every smart TV, every connected refrigerator. This is where the IoT,
Our clothes.
Probably pretty soon. Seeing the Bose frames are really nice.
I met with that team at CES.
Me too.
It was
awesome.
very, very exciting.
So I love where we're going with this idea of having access at all times for the interface, and increasingly for users. Take myself out of the design development side, just getting used to it, living in it for a while. It's right now, if you look at the trend of what mobile adoption looked like, we're in the first couple of years here. We're in the moments where the App Store was just being developed, where none of this was built yet. And then that brings you to the other half of that front-back paradigm of the structure and what are the assistants that we're doing. We're just seeing such rapid advances. At this point, if we're briefing in a client project and it's going to be something that's going to take a couple months, we generally say to them, here is the starting point that we're building from. Understand that by the time this comes to market, there could be entirely new features that don't even exist today, aren't publicly accessible. New features coming along might change the way we want to solve this question-answer problem. And increasingly, my hope on a 5-year trajectory, we're looking at much better, much more portable data from one platform to another, an ability for users to opt in, hopefully to be very respectful of their data, but to be able to deliver a little more personalization in a conversation that had point A and then followed up with point B, C, and D, and networking together of all of these different backend platforms, with whether that's an over-the-top assistant that follows from one to the other, or some of the token passing. I don't know what the answer is going to be yet, but a place where we, as brands, as marketers, as publishers, whatever perspective we're coming from, can talk across these different channels with some continuity from
Right. This was wonderful. How do people get a hold of Vayner Smart,
Yeah.
specific for the strategy development your team does, and you personally? How do they get a hold of you on social?
Yeah, you can go to Vaynermedia.com and inquiry form there. Happy to do that. Otherwise, you can email me directly, pgivens@vaynermedia.com, or on LinkedIn, Patrick Givens. Look me up there. I'm pretty responsive.
Great.
Love to talk to y'all.
All right.
Thanks so much.
That was
Appreciate
great.
it.
That was great. We'll say goodbye to